Welcome to Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Join us for an in-depth look at Iowa agriculture. Here's your host, Dustin Hoffman.
Well, welcome to another edition of Weekend Ag Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Russ Parker, Mark Magnuson, and Riley Smith will all be along very shortly. But let's go ahead and kick things off by looking at some farm news we've been following this week. President Donald Trump will seek a funding package for the war unfolding in Iran, and Republican lawmakers are debating whether to attach wildfire aid and $15 billion in tariff relief for farmers to the package. Four sources told the news representatives of E&E that senior GOP congressional aides stressed that no decision's been made yet. Sources said House Republicans are particularly cautious about the idea of a package growing too large. Meantime, Bloomberg has said the Senate Republicans are feeling rising pressure from farmers in their states for a bailout to offset quickly rising fuel and fertilizer prices due to the war. The Republican Senate Ag Committee chair called for the new federal aid to help farmers in the wake of spiking prices for gas, diesel, and fertilizer, driven by the offensive against Iran. I think that we're very definitely going to need some help, said Senator John Boozman. If you're growing something, you're losing money. Well, farmers across the country are already signing up for the new Farmer Bridge Assistance payments from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the program was designed to provide short-term financial relief to producers ahead of the 26 growing season. And USDA officials say participation has been strong since enrollment opened in late February. USDA Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation Richard Fordyce says farmers responded almost immediately after the sign-up period began on July 23rd. The Farm Service Agency has already received hundreds of thousands of applications from producers across the country.
Well, Dustin, great question. FBA, Farmer Bridge Assistance, sign-up began on February 23rd, and lots of response literally that first day, and we've had, amazing response every day since. As of last night, 352,000 applications have been received by the Farm Service Agency. Of those, well over 300,000 of those have been approved. And again, as of last night, $7.47 billion have been obligated to producers.
The program allows farmers to enroll either by visiting their local Farm Service Agency office or by using the digital option through the new login.gov. Fordyce says many producers are beginning to take advantage of the online system. Very few changes came in the USDA WASDE report that came out earlier this week. The USDA ending stocks were left alone, and the crop production estimates for Brazil and Argentina were slightly adjusted. Allendale commodity broker Greg McBride said it was a very neutral report overall.
We only saw minor adjustments, but they were more offsetting than anything. No changes to the ending stocks for U.S. side of things. Corn left at $2.127 billion. Soybeans left at $350 million, and wheat left at $931 million. The only changes we saw when it came to production, you did have a slight increase of 1 million tons to the Brazilian corn crop, 132 million tons now. No change to soybeans. Argentina saw a decrease of 1 million tons in corn, basically offsetting the Brazilian crop, and then a slight decrease of half a million tons of soybeans for Argentina.
Since there are usually low expectations for the March WASDE report, McBride said global news like the conflict in Iran will continue to affect the ag marketplace the most until we get to the quarterly grain stocks and prospective planning reports at the end of this month. Well, the public comment period for the 45Z tax credit proposal is ending on April 15th. Since this legislation has been in the works for so long, it's incredibly important for producers to speak up on what they want to see in it. Mitchell Ora, founder of Continuum Ag, said his company has been working hard to get the 45Z tax credit over the finish line.
45Z is a tax credit for low carbon biofuel, especially important for ethanol. And 45Z was originally part of the Inflation Reduction Act back in 2022. And the whole purpose is that the ethanol plants can earn tax credits for lowering their carbon footprint. And farmers are a big part of their carbon footprint, but through the use of regenerative practices like cover crops and no-till, we can lower the carbon footprint of our corn, therefore lowering the carbon footprint of the ethanol.
The proposed rule was finally published in February. Ora said that while we have strong advocates for 45Z here in Iowa, the next steps lie with the federal government. You can learn more by visiting continuum.ag. 2025 proved to be another strong year for U.S. pork exports with a volume of 2.9 million metric tons. This is 3% shy of the 2024 record, but it was still the third highest on record. Value was 3% down from 2024's record, but the second highest overall at $8.4 billion. Andy Tower, Vice President of International Market Development for the National Pork Board, said the industry continues to see sustained demand for U.S. pork in the Western Hemisphere.
Mexico was record large this year in both terms of value and volume, records in other Central American countries as well as the Caribbean. And so, again, I think that really starts to solidify U.S. pork's footprint in this Western Hemisphere. We do continue to see some challenges and some headwinds with some of our Asian markets. A lot of that is driven by, geopolitics as well as dollar value.
For more export data, visit porkcheckoff.org. And a reminder that Monday is the deadline to sign up for your crop insurance programs. Make sure you're getting into your local FSA offices or talking with your crop insurance advisors to get that taken care of. Again, the deadline Monday, March 16th, as the 15th falls on a weekend. That's going to do it for me in the news headlines here in segment 1. Now Russ Parker is in with his faith-based food for thought.
I've mentioned before that I have a great fear of heights, but oddly enough, my favorite place on a jet plane is in the window seat, and I actually enjoy looking down at the landscape below. The reason I mention this is because of a recent trip to Florida. At an altitude of 33,000 feet for a good part of the flight, there were clouds, so seeing the ground wasn't possible. But the view looking straight out the window was beautiful. Clear, bright, and stretching for miles. At that height, it almost feels like heaven is very, very close. And later during our stay, we went over to the west coast of Florida, to the Miami area, and visited friends in a 10-story condominium right on the ocean. And from their 5th floor apartment, we could see the ocean perfectly. The water was deep blue with lighter shades revealing the different depths beneath the surface. And looking straight out, the air was remarkably clear. Having a clear line of sight with no obstructions is more often than not a pretty special event. In contrast, the car ride from the west coast to the east coast of Florida was vastly different. We encountered traffic and fog, and even in the wide open spaces, only once in a while could we catch glimpses of faraway places. Something always seemed to be in the way. And life can feel like that sometimes, can't it? We often hear the cliche about the 10,000-foot view, but there's some truth in it. From a higher elevation like an airplane or a high-rise, we can see the big picture. It's one thing to see the beach from the 5th story or from 33,000 feet, but it's quite another thing to actually walk on it. In our faith journey, there are times when the road ahead feels a little foggy, and our view is limited, and we can't always see very far down the road. The Bible encourages us in Colossians 3 to set our minds on things above and not on earthly things. In other words, lift our eyes beyond the distractions and obstacles right in front of us and focus on the greater perspective that God offers. And life, it seems, becomes clearer as heaven comes into view. And from that perspective, the important things of life become clearer in our mind's eye. So in these times particularly, when there are so many distractions that sometimes we don't even know what to look at or for, let's keep in mind to keep our eyes focused upward, and our direction for our journey will become plain to see. Food for thought, I hope. This is Russ Parker. Have a blessed day.
Thanks, Russ, and that's going to do it here for segment 1 of Weekend Ag Matters. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Mark Magnuson will be in with segment 2. Stay with us on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Tessenderlo Curley, Manager of Agronomy, Zach Ogles, tells us what their products Thiosol and KTS can do for Iowa farmers.
So over the course of several years, we've done field trials evaluating the level of nitrification inhibition, as well as the yield bump that we see from that sulfur nutrition. We've seen between 8 and 10 bushels per acre of yield increase as a combination of the sulfur nutrition and protecting that nitrogen and getting the most value out of that.
Ask your local retailer about Thiosol and KTS.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here is Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network here at Commodity Classic 2026. And I'm joined by Nadav Bocher. And Nadav, I know that we've been talking now for several years about Greeneye Technology as a company and your precision spraying. And I think back to, it was 2022 when we first spoke here on the network. And it was kind of, at that point, something that was still being conceptualized in terms of precision spraying. It was something that you had been working on, but it wasn't fully realized yet at that point. We've come a long way since then. Could you tell us about where your company is right now and what that adoption has looked like for customers?
Of course. So thanks for the interview. And exactly like you said, if you go 3-4 years back, precision spraying was kind of a promise everybody, the industry was waiting for. But I think today what we see, this is not a question of if, we actually see adoption in the market. We've seen a consistent growth within Greeneye. We are available in 12 different states in the U.S. right now. Iowa is one of the key states for us, so we have more and more customers across the state. And I think what's interesting to see is as we approach our 4th commercial season, is now customers are not asking themselves, should I adopt this technology, is what is the best way of utilizing it and adopting it, right? So I think it's a kind of a different discussion where you had to convince before the technology is real and works. Now that's not the conversation. The conversation is what's the best way to adopt this that fits my operation.
And we know obviously that Iowa is one of the major row crop states in the entire country. So at a time with tight margins, farmers are looking for ways to save money. They're trying to be as efficient as possible. That's where precision spraying can play a big part. And you mentioned that the state of Iowa has been one of those states that has really taken this technology and run with it, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, we've seen a lot of traction in Iowa. And I think what we also see is like when we talk to our customers, this is not purely about savings. I mean, I think we are unique because we are by far the most precise precision spraying solution. So typically saving would be 80 to 90%. Now that's big, but that doesn't tell the full story. I think what we see, and we see from our customers in Iowa as well, is that customers are looking to further increase the benefit from this technology, and that is tapping into maximizing their yields, making sure they're using the strongest, best chemicals now that they spray only 15 or 10% of the field. Right, so this is getting the full, value proposition, savings, clean field, maximum yield. And I think it's great, and we see our customers in Iowa utilizing exactly like this. With, keep in mind, I want to maximize savings, but I also want to make sure I'm getting a clean field, I'm managing resistance well, and I'm maximizing the yield I can get.
So obviously farmers at a show like this are going to be able to see Greeneye technology up close and personal. Has it been widespread enough throughout the state that farmers are now hearing that word of mouth from their neighbors or other farmers that they know, and the ability to pass on that knowledge that they've gained from using this technology and saying that it could help them?
Absolutely. So like I said, we are available now in 12 different states, and we are growing very, very rapidly. And I think what farmers are seeing, like I said, is this combination of savings and efficacy. And I think what's unique about Greeneye's solution, it's an aftermarket solution. So farmers, especially in this economy, they don't have to go and buy a new equipment. We know how expensive it is. They can retrofit their existing machine, whatever it is, whatever color, brand, model, to a smart, intelligent machine. And I think especially in today's market, we all navigate as an industry a challenging down market environment. The aftermarket approach is highly appreciated by customers.
It makes things so easily adaptable for farmers, and you mentioned it early on in our interview here today that precision spraying from Greeneye is top of the line. So how have you been able to demonstrate that to farmers that this is the solution for them, even, thinking about some of the brands that they're buying a new piece of equipment for, some of the aftermarket solutions? Why is precision spraying from Greeneye the way they should go?
So I think there's a few aspects. Number one is just being farmer friendly in our model. So we charge no per acre fee, no subscription. You buy the technology, you own it for life, as long as you can use it as long as you want. And I think that's a big difference. I think the industry appreciates it, that I buy something and I own it. That's on the pricing side. I think on the product side, we take pride in two main things. We deliver the highest savings, but we also deliver clean field. We take efficacy very, very, very seriously. And that's why we have the dual tank, dual line solution, because we understand we have to enable our customers not just to pinpoint those weeds, but at the same time, very often farmers need to put down residual across the entire field. And we are the only solution that offers those two applications at the same time. And I think this UNL trial we've released earlier this week, that's exactly what it shows, is that as a farmer that is thinking, okay, precision spraying is here, which product fits me the best? I think what it shows is that when you find a product like Greeneye that enables the best practice agronomy, you can benefit from the highest savings, but also highest yield because your field is clean and you can put residual at the same time that you spot spray.
So Nadav, for farmers at a show like Commodity Classic that are first hearing about Greeneye for the first time, what are the very first things that they want to know about and the questions they have? Is it a question like you mentioned, the ability to broadcast spray, but then also have that spot spraying at the same time?
Yeah, so a few questions that always come. Per acre, are you charging per acre? And I'm always glad to tell them, no, we don't. The other thing is residual. Okay, they get the concept, they understand it, they understand the saving potential, but then the first question is, what do I do with my residual? And then we talk about having two lines, two tanks, and you can broadcast at the same time. So I think those are the two questions that we keep getting from farmers passing by our booth.
Nadav Bocher with Greeneye Technology, my guest here today at the Commodity Classic Show. Is there anything else you'd like to let our Iowa farmers, our Iowa listeners know about when it comes to Greeneye Technology? Just anything you're excited about right now?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of new features coming out, expanding to new crops and new use cases beyond herbicides. But the most important thing is understanding that precision spraying is here. Iowa is one of our strongest states as far as adoption, and we see it, like I said, across the country. So if you're interested, just reach out to us and we'll tell you more about what this product can do for you.
And one more question I thought of. I have been coming to shows and talking with you now for several years. I've had the chance to see it at a show like this, but I also got the chance to do a ride-along with one of your precision spraying rigs, aftermarket setups. And until you really see it in action, that really brings the whole picture together. Is that available for farmers? Is there a way that they can see it in action and actually see this spraying technology at work?
Yeah, so I mean, the benefit today that we grew so much, we have customers all over. So it's really easy for me to just hook up someone that is interested with a close by farmer that he can see the machine live. Also come to one of our dealership locations, another alternative. So for those of you that want to see this technology live, just reach out to us and we'll be able to arrange it.
He is Nadav Bocher with Greeneye Technology, my guest here today in San Antonio, Texas. Thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great rest of the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Nadav Bocher of Greeneye Technology for joining today's episode of Weekend Ag Matters. A reminder, you can find this episode online at our website at iowaagnet.com. Just click on the podcast tab. Coming up next, Riley Smith will wrap up today's show. You're listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here's Riley Smith.
Riley Smith, Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and learning today from Iowa State University about a novel, compact, all-in-one biomanufacturing device that can make it much easier and far more affordable for companies to produce important biological products at small scale. Funded by Biomade, it's the Continuous Taylor Vortex Fermentator Extractor Separator. And I am with two of the professors from Iowa State who worked on this. First off, Dr. Dennis Vigil, if you could talk a little bit about the program and just what led up to that and kind of its primary function.
Yeah, Riley, I think just some general background here. There's really been a revolution in biotechnology. I think most people are aware of that, things like genetic engineering. And to really fully realize the potential of that technology and to see the benefits in a place like Iowa, which is well positioned because of access to renewable feedstocks, what has really been missing from all of that has been what we would call the process engineering technology to go to large scales of manufacturing. And that's what this project is really all about. With Professor Hsiao, she has expertise in the genetic engineering, the synthetic biology part. And I had a background in what we'd say chemical reaction engineering. And we worked together to create a better environment for carrying out fermentation to produce desired high-value products. So that's kind of the general background on this. And the Biomade Institute, which is funded by the Department of Defense, saw this as a critical national need. And this was also supported by an organization called Schmidt Sciences. So we had the opportunity to carry out this project, and it's been really exciting.
So then I'll kind of follow up on that. You mentioned your expertise on the side of it, kind of on the chemical engineering side. Obviously, the function here is we're kind of streamlining, bringing these processes together. Normally, these are very complicated and maybe lengthy processes that require dedicated facilities, right?
Yes. I mean, usually there are multiple capital costs here involved with each step. So first you have to prepare the feedstock material that may require equipment. Then you carry out the actual fermentation in a bioreactor. There's a lot of cost associated with that as well. And then even after you carry out the fermentation, the next step is to separate the fermentation broth from any to separate the high value products from the fermentation broth. And in order to do that, often you have to do what's called liquid extraction. So downstream, even after you carry out the fermentation, there can be a lot of costs associated with equipment. And so this device that we worked on, it tries to integrate several steps in one device.
All right, and I'm also joined by Professor Zhengyi Hsiao of Iowa State University. And Professor Hsiao, you being brought onto this project, working on that as well. I'll just kind of pose the same question to you from your expertise. It's very, complicated processes that could definitely use, having that streamlining would be quite a bit of a benefit, right?
Yes, because some of the value-added compounds are actually toxic to the production host. So in the project, we are trying to produce fatty alcohol. If you look at the chemical structure of this compound, it has a hydrophobic tail and a hydrophilic head. So this property make the products inserted into the cell membrane, which will inhibit the cell growth. So you can think about this as a contradictory goals. While being produced, this product, we hope to have a very high titer, but in the end, it stops the production host from rapid growing. So we want to develop this process, have a streamlined process to do this in situ extraction. So in our setup, we have an organic layer composed of a dodecaine, constantly extract this fatty alcohol from the cell. So we can, the goal is to fulfill this separation while being produced, while this equipment can facilitate this separation process.
And then I'll follow up on that, Professor Hsiao. Not only does that make that, like you mentioned, safer, but just makes it more accessible to a wider range of users at that point, right?
So the current scale we are making is about 14 liter. So the height of the reactor is about 3 to 4 meter feet. Sorry about that. So it is more movable instead of set up a really large fermenter, and we are able to carry out to different places. And also because this process allow this continuous production, so we do not need to have a really bulky high volume at the beginning.
All right, and then Dr. Vigil, as we look forward from the kind of development of this device, kind of what's the next step of getting that accessible out there for users and, further developing this?
Yeah, so I think what we achieved in this project was really proof of concept that you could combine these multiple steps in one device. I think the next steps are to continue to scale the device up. And we did some of that work actually in this project. We need to go to larger volumes. The largest reactor we had was 14 liters, and that may not sound very large, but we were able to figure out how to go to much larger volumes without a lot of trial and error that is usually involved in traditional scale up. So I think the next steps are to better understand how to optimize the performance of this device, as well as to continue the scale up. And in that latter part, I think we'll need to be partnering with a company to move this more towards commercialization.
All right. Thank you to both of you for joining me today, and good luck as you continue to develop this product.
Thank you, Ray.
And that's it for today's episode of Weekend Ag Matters. Thanks again for tuning in. You can listen to this episode and more by going to the podcast tab on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network website at iowaagnet.com. For Russ Parker, Mark Magnuson, and Dustin Huffman, I'm Riley Smith, wishing you a great rest of your weekend. Join us again next week for more Weekend Ag Matters.